So I want to talk a little bit about how the president of the United States, the first one, the father of our country, how he used to do his hair. So I'm not going to hold this the whole time. Just get a good look, right? He's got the sides, right? The sides are all frizzed out and it's curly. And so, you know, George Washington, this is what his hair looks like. There's something about when it comes to using images that you have to get the permission, but it's a historical figure, but then it was a portrait, so the rights might still be owned by somebody, but then it's only for so many years, 20, 30, 50, 100 years or something, before it becomes general public, before the public, you're allowed to use it for general public use. So this is just going to be... I assume I'm allowed to do this, but George Washington and his pretty hair. So, in addition to wearing white stockings to make his calves look all purty, George Washington also loved to powder his nose. No, I'm kidding. He liked to powder his hair. That was actually his real hair too. Some people said he wore a wig. No, that's not true. The people that says that he wore a wig would be wrong. They would be wrong. That white hair, the frilly, the frizzy curls on the side, they were all his. All naturelle. Okay, not all naturelle. His real hair color actually was brown, like a reddish brown. But that's nothing a little bit of white powdering can't take care of. So, George Washington, he would get his hair all did as part of his hour or two long morning routine with slave help. So he would get his hair all did, hour or two long morning routine with slave help. Maybe he used William Billy Lee, his best slave, or his best friend, his best slave friend, his best slave friend. He would get him to help him. Or maybe it was Deborah Squash, or Harvey Squash, or Oney Judge, or Hercules, or any of his other 313 slaves. George Washington would get his black slaves, or maybe his white indentured servants, which he also had, to pull his hair back. Okay, so the first thing was to get it into sort of like a rat ponytail. So he'd get his hair, he would get all of his hair, and he'd pull his hair back, and then George Washington would have his rat ponytail tied off in the back with a big old pretty black, red, maybe even a yellow bow, right? So he gets a nice pretty bow. By having his hair pulled back, what he was doing, you know, by pulling his hair back and tying it with a pretty yellow bow, he was trying to prominently display his forehead, because back then foreheads were a sign of toughness. I think it was a military thing. Well, no, it's something the Prussians did or the British did. So he would prominently display his forehead. So that's why he would get his black slaves, pull his hair back, and then tie it in a nice pretty yellow bow, right? And that was in vogue. That was the thing back then, just like raping slaves was. Foreheads conveyed force and power. And that's what George Washington was going for, to have that nice pretty yellow, right? Well, you don't see the ponytail. So to get the ponytail, nice big yellow bow. Okay, once he's got it, you know, tied off in a yellow bow, well, actually, sometimes he would get his hair braided. Sometimes he would braid his hair, and then instead of tying his rat ponytail off with a pretty yellow bow. Okay, so now once George Washington's hair was tied back, showing that beautiful, proud and prominent and dominating forehead, George Washington would then get his slaves to put a powdered jacket on. Okay, so his powdered jacket was just a coat or like a towel or a rag. He would put the powdered jacket on so none of the powder would get on his clothes, because he's going to, you know, his reddish brown hair. He don't like reddish brown hair for some reason. He doesn't like his actual natural hair color. He wants to make it all white. Make it all, you know, pretty lily white. So he puts the powder jacket on, and then he'd put a paper cone, like a paper cone. I don't have a paper cone. Just, you know, imagine what a cone looks like. So a cone, and he'd put a cone in his face. I got a piece of paper here. So, you know, take a paper cone, put the cone over his face, right? And then once he has the cone over his face, he's got the powder jacket on. And then he's, you know, he's ready to put the powder on. So he protected his face so none of the powder would get on his face. He's protecting his clothes so none of the powder would get on his clothes. And then the slave that was helping him would take a puffball, and a puffball made of silk strips. And coming off of it, there's a puffball, silk strips, and then they had a powder bag, so they would dip the puffball with the silk strips into the powder bag, getting powder all over it. And then while his head was bent, if he's got the cone on his face, I guess his hair would be bent somehow. I don't know. Somehow his hair was bent, and then I think, let's see, if you're bent up, then it would be all falling down. So, right, dip, 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 sprinkle, 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 dip, 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 sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. Maybe it could have been back. He could have been back, right? So that way it's getting to his roots. So that way the powder is getting all the way from the tips to the roots. I mean, he didn't want anybody to actually see his roots. I mean, that might be a little embarrassing, right? So he would get the slaves are helping him. We'll just say William Lee. So Billy Lee is sitting there, getting his hair all dead in the morning, covered his face with the cone, covered his shoulders with the clothing, and then took the puff ball with silk strips, which, I mean, how do they got this shit? I don't even know if they got, well, maybe it's silk. It's not silk strips. Anyways. And then while his head was bent, they would sprinkle the powder all over. Okay, then George Washington's slaves would put a black silk bag over his ponytail. So once he had that rat ponytail with a pretty yellow bow on it, he would put a black silk bag over it. Okay, so before we were protecting the face and the shoulders, now we're protecting that rat ponytail with a yellow bow on it with a black silk bag. And this is so he can get the frills, so he can get the, let's see here. So he can get the frills and the curls, right? He has those curls on the side. So he had to work on them frills right there, right? So he's got the ponytail. Oh, and actually you do see it. You do see the bow, right? Little corner of the bow right there. It's not yellow. Well, it could be yellow. I don't know. It's black and white. So, okay, where are we at now? We're curling his hair. Okay, so right, this is all to be tough, right? Curl your hair, put frizz in it, put a bunch of powder in it, right? This is something that the average American can relate to. Powder in your hair, curling just the side, making a long ponytail, but curling the sides, right? So you can, of course, right? We all could relate to this. As the father of the country, why would we not do our hairstyle the same way the father of our country would do it? I mean, he's smart. He's got style and grace. So they put the black silk bag over it, so when he was doing those frills, the pomade wouldn't get into onto the rat tail. And sometimes he would also use natural oils. So the pomade needed to just be concentrated on his side wings where he curled his hair. Once the black silk bag was covering the back of his head, George Washington would fluff his hair, frizz it out, frizz it, curl it, frizz, fluff, 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 make them into wings, make them into pretty little curls, and he would secure his curls and his wings with natural oils from his hair, which means he didn't bathe or shampoo his hair for, days. Make sure those natural oils was real thick, or pomade. So once he gets the curls, frizz, and then he would put pomade so that it would stick together. And some of y'all might say, this is George Washington just being all prettiful, right? Just like a little purty girl. Oh, girl. Oh, look at Georgie. Look at Georgina. Purty girl. You purty little girl. Look at you with your pretty little hair. That's just the cutest little thing there, Georgina. But no, actually what he was doing, he was showing how tough he was. He wasn't trying to be pretty, he was showing how to be tough. This is something the military, I guess the aristocratic militia of the military did. That's what they said. That's what, that's what they're saying. That's what my sources are telling me. Because back in George Washington's day, only the toughest of the tough would spend an hour or two getting their slaves to pull their hair back and tie their pony rat tail off with a pretty yellow bow so they could prominently display their foreheads. And then they would powder their reddish brown hair to make it bright and white, and then get it pomade the sides so the frills and the wings and the curls would stick together. That's what the toughest of the toughest people would do, right? It was a British or Prussian military thing. This is what the Prussians or the British, my sources, it's a Prussian or British military thing, okay? You would not understand. And now, while, to be serious, it is a bit effeminate, and that's okay. You know, Muhammad Ali, he said he was pretty. I'm pretty, and I know it. And that's good. It's good to be confident in your looks. Pretty, handsome, right? It's all the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that. My issue with it is that it's just not relatable. It's not relatable. I don't believe the average American can relate to it. I can't relate to it. And then to say that it's tough, I mean, if you're saying that it's to be pretty, I could accept that actually better. Oh, you're trying to be pretty, okay, but you're trying to be tough? Oh, you a tough guy, are you? Oh, you a wise guy, eh? You a tough guy, eh? Oh, you are a tough guy. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, is that what you're going? You weren't going for pretty. You're going for tough. So, right? Curls, frills, pretty yellow bow, powder, white-haired, reddish brown hair, powdered white. It's not pretty. It's tough.